Alright, hello everybody. I want to do a quick tier list on whether or not I think GameCube games are going to come to the Switch online GameCube server, or if they're just ported in any other capacity, which is also a possibility. So in the top row, we have the games that are already confirmed. I know that F-Zero, uh, Soul Calibur, and Wind Waker are already there. Other ones will probably come later on, and more are going to be confirmed during the next Direct, most likely. So starting up with the most likely category, Kirby's Air Ride. For a split second, I thought this one was already confirmed, and I'm kind of surprised it wasn't. But just for the sake of having a Kirby game there, I feel like that's an obvious pick. Zelda Four Swords Adventure. The idea of playing the Four Sword game on a Direct Switch console is, that's why Four Swords Adventure was there in the first place, so I don't see why they wouldn't. Now, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. I'm a little bit less likely on this because since it finally got the remake, I don't know if the original is going to get ported necessarily because there's a lot of differences between the two. Generally, the original is slower and has a bit more backtracking, but I feel like it's still a popular enough game people would have demand for it. Beyond Good and Evil, I know this is not GameCube exclusive, which most of the other games on this list are, but this is a pretty popular cult classic game, and I feel like there's a good chance they could throw this there. Wario World, it's Wario's 3D platformer game. It's not even really a 3D platformer, I guess. It's like a pseudo 3D, collection platformer, but it's got good enough gimmicks, and it's unique enough from most of the mainline Mario games that I feel like it has a pretty good chance of being thrown there. So the first Super Monkey Ball and Beautiful Joe. Now, I have their sequels in the category below this, and the main reason for that is because I feel like the first games in the lineup were easily the most iconic, whereas the following games, they just, even if they sold well, they weren't as immediately iconic, and they have a much larger size, so it's less likely that they can be ported there. I feel fairly confident that the GameCube Animal Crossing would get ported because it's not too complex of a game, although that does raise the question, and this is probably the one reason why I could see it not going there. If you remember, they had NES games available through Animal Crossing, so that's weird. It's like you'd be playing an NES emulator inside of a GameCube emulator, which is funny to think about. Mario Kart Double Dash, it's a pretty large game, at least in terms of size, so I don't know if there's a guarantee of it, but just because Mario Kart 64 and all the other ones got ported in the Switch 1 for their applicable consoles, I feel like there's a good chance of this. So Mario Power Tennis, I have more confidence in this one than the other sports games just because Mario Tennis is usually pretty popular. But again, I feel less likely. Basically, most likely I'd say is 90% and probably is 70-ish%. Pikmin 1 and 2, they already got Switch 1 ports, so I feel like that's not unreasonable to expect that. Star Fox Assault, I would really like to see this game here because it never got any adequate attention over the years. It got unfairly slagged off, I think, because a lot of people did not like the on-foot stages, and they didn't like some of the all-range missions and the serious tone, which, okay, if you preferred 64 more, I'm not going to argue with you about it, but I enjoy this game quite a lot, and I feel like the fact that it hasn't been ported so far, it's a great game and needs another opportunity. And then we have Ikaruga, that's the space shooter. I do believe that got just a regular port in Switch 1, so I don't think it's unreasonable that this would happen. Now we're moving into the games that I think are about 50-50 in terms of their category. So I have the 4 GameCube Mario parties here. They ported the N64 Mario parties to the first Switch, yes. These are much larger games, of course. I feel like if anyone has the best chance of happening, it is probably 4, just because the boards are the simplest and the most straightforward, because on 4, it's like you're kind of on a light rail that's over top of the board, and it doesn't really, dip or curve or rise or anything. Whereas 5, 6, and 7, you're actually on the map. They're jumping over platforms, they're going up mountains and down slopes and yada yada. My personal pick would be 6, because that's my favorite. I feel like the least likely would be 5, because surprisingly 5 has more boards than the other ones, and I feel like that has a lot to do with the size of the game. At least that's what I'm assuming. Metroid Prime 1 and 2, I feel like just their original GameCube versions, there's not really much of a reason not to, but also, again, the size of the game, I'm not saying for certain. Now, Sonic Heroes. This is a weird one to me. Sonic Heroes has never actually been ported to any modern system, and even though it was released on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, I feel like just because there are a lot of Sonic games that stay exclusive to a Nintendo console, and just because Sonic Heroes does have its defenders, I feel like it's not unreasonable for this game to get a port for the Switch 2. Mario Golf and Baseball, like, it's not unreasonable to see them there, but these, at least as far as I'm aware, these games were never as popular as the Mario Tennis games, so I don't think it's going to happen. Eternal Darkness, kind of a serious game and a horror game, so it would seem a little bit out of place, but again, it has its cult following, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Dragon's Lair 3D is a weird one that I grew up with, and my rationale for that one being here is just due to the fact that I guess modern gaming perception has kind of shifted because of the Soulsborne era, and I'm not saying Dragon's Lair 3D is as hard as most of the standard Soulsborne or Souls-like games, but I feel like just because it came out way before them, and you can sort of see that it had some similar vibes, I think they might give it another chance and hype it up as being like an early prototype for that. Because it is still a reasonably hard game, even if it's not quite on par with most of FromSoft's games. Alright, Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. This one has never been ported either, so I think there's a reasonable probability of it happening, but I can't say for certain. Killer 7, again, pretty serious and mature, but huge cult following. And then 1080 Avalanche. I don't really have much knowledge on this. I just know that the N64 1080 snowboard game was put on the Switch 1, so I feel like that's not unreasonable. Alright, now we're getting to We Should, but Probably Won't. These are games that I feel like, even though the demand is going to be high, they are arbitrarily not going to happen for one reason or another. So don't really call this a probability. Or if you do, I'd say that this is actually less than 10%. So Melee, obviously, because they did, even though it was the best-selling game on the GameCube and still arguably the most popular, they did not port Smash 64 to the Switch 1 online or to the Wii U Virtual Console, which was always an odd decision to me. Even if they get it, a lot of people are speculating that, number one, they just wouldn't have Wi-Fi play, because if they do have Wi-Fi play, it would be terrible. And the other scenario people are worried about is it would end up being the PAL version, which the TLDR of that is the PAL version had some minor balance patches that nerfed Fox, Falco, Marth, and Sheik, but left Jigglypuff and Peach almost completely unaffected. So yeah, a lot of fans would not want to play that just because they don't like Puff and Peach. Alright, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. So whenever they port Metal Gear Solid nowadays, it's almost always the original PlayStation 1 version. So Twin Snakes, for being over the top and kind of heavily theatric, does not get its adequate respect. And it should. They very realistically could port it, but they probably won't. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. So even though this was playable with a regular GameCube controller, they had that special bongo controller, which they used for this and the other rhythm games. They're a category down. Like, this one's an actual 2D platformer, so I think it has a good reason to get ported, but it's probably not going to just because of the controller thing. Now, Mega Man X Command Mission and Mega Man Network Transmission. For those who aren't too well versed in all the Mega Man side series, this is confusing. So, Command Mission is an X game. The X games are usually 2D action platformers, but this is a turn-based JRPG. And Network Transmission, despite the fact that Battle Network games were usually isometric pseudo-RPGs, this is the 2D action platformer. It was meant to be like a hybrid between that gameplay style and the classic series. Command Mission was also on PS2, but whereas Network Transmission was GameCube exclusive, they've never been ported either, which is kind of bizarre because even though the gameplay can be seen as a little clunky, I feel like they should have been given another try or ported elsewhere. Alright, Skies of Arcadia Legends. So this, whether or not it's the GameCube or Dreamcast version, I would be happy with either, because there aren't that many differences between the two. It's just a game, it's a Sega game, JRPG, pretty damn impressive, but it never really gets ported or its respect. Now, I have Star Fox Adventures way lower than I had Star Fox Assault, And the main reason for that is, even though it came out first and it still sold reasonably well, people did not like it. Now that we have actually seen the footage of what the Dinosaur Planet N64 game was going to be like, I feel like they're actually even harder on this game because they know what we could have had before Fox was abruptly jammed into the story. And even if you like the game, and I like it to a reasonable extent, and I think that having save states, or the rewind feature, would help with a lot of the nonsensical moments, like the, the Cloud Runner Fortress, the Test of Fear outside of Lightfoot Village, the stupid button mashing in Lightfoot Village. I feel like this would mitigate a lot of those issues, so it would make the game seem more palatable to a lot of people, but that's probably not going to happen. Okay, moving on to the unlikely category. So, Pokemon Channel, even though it's a pretty rare and expensive game, it's just like a simulation pet play game. I don't know what exactly you'd call it, but it's not very deep in gameplay, so I don't think it's going to happen. The GameCube version of Ocarina of Time, the Master Quest. It wouldn't be that big because it is functionally just Ocarina of Time, but slightly remixed, but they don't really seem to do much with it, so I don't think it'll happen. The Sonic Adventure games, I don't think we're going to see ports of them because they're on most other systems right now anyway. It would be kind of funny if we do, though, because apparently the PC versions actually got more buggy than the GameCube versions, so that would be the one instance where the where the Nintendo version is actually superior to other consoles, which unfortunately doesn't happen too much nowadays. Shadow's game, Shadow's reasonably popular. It's not completely out of the question because of the success of the third movie, but I wouldn't bet money on it. Tales of Symphonia, I'm on the fence on how unlikely this is because it got a regular Switch port, so I don't think they're going to touch the GameCube version. Again, with Resident Evil 4, there's, not factoring in the remake, there is just an HD remaster of the original GameCube version, so giving us, like, the standard GameCube frame rate and jank, I just don't think will happen. The Donkey Konga games, I gotta be honest, these should probably be at the bottom of this list just because of the rights they'd have to get for the music. But just because they're rhythm games and just because of the fact you need to use the special controller, I don't think that's likely to happen. Now you're probably wondering what the heck is this, Future Tactics: The Uprising. So this is a game that was released on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. It's a turn-based strategy game that some people call a knockoff of the 3D Worms game, which is further down. This game has never really been ported anywhere. It's dirt cheap. My friends and I grew up with it, and although it would be kind of funny to see it there, it's probably not going to happen just because it's a very obscure, weird game. I just put it there for the sake of, I guess, let's be honest, nobody else talks about it. It would be kind of nice to see it ported because it should be put somewhere, but I don't think it's going to happen. Gauntlet Dark Legacy, that I don't have too much knowledge on. I know it had a bit of success, but I don't think it's going to get ported. The Harvest Moons, I don't see it likely that they'll happen just because if they're going to put any simulation game there, I'm almost positive it would end up being Animal Crossing. I could be wrong, but I don't think it'll happen. Go-Go Hypergrind, I know has a bit of a fan base, but probably not likely. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, I probably should have had this next to Tales of Symphonia, but in this tier, it's not so much arranged by what I think is most likely, just kind of a hodgepodge, and for the same reasons, there has been a regular port of it to the Switch, so I don't know if they'll just throw the GameCube version on Switch too. Worms 3D doesn't really get much attention nowadays. Throwback I've randomly thought of is the Tak and the Power of Juju games. They had a good bit of marketing and success, and there was the TV show on Nicktoons, but after that they've never gone anywhere. I don't think it would be too bad to see them there because they've never been ported, as far as I'm aware, but probably not going to happen. Now, I put a Yu-Gi-Oh game here, Falsebound Kingdom, which was a GameCube exclusive. You might be wondering why I have a random licensed game here when the next category down is all licensed. Basically, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like the one weird licensed franchise where they actually do port some of their old games, like we had the recent Early Days collection not long ago. So I don't think it's completely impossible, but I would not bet money on it. It would be kind of nice, though, because if there was some type of way to speed it up, then that would make the game much more manageable. And then Wave Race, that's kind of similar to I don't really have much knowledge on it, but the fact that the Wave Race game on N64 was ported there makes me think it could happen. But I don't know anyone who's actually played this game for more than a few minutes, so I don't think it's going to be a very popular pick. I could be wrong, though. And then last category, I just loaded that with some licensed games that even though they had a bit of popularity and success, they just aren't likely to be included because, they're licensed games, and Nintendo doesn't seem to do that, except for that weird Quest for Camelot Game Boy game, whatever that was about. I want to draw a quick mention to this basketball Disney game here. This one would be funny if they ported, if only just because, as far as I'm aware, this is the most expensive GameCube game in North America, going for like $1,000 US. So, if you want to piss off the scalpers, you could put this one specifically, but I wouldn't bet too much money on it.